I declare the meeting open. Welcome to the 18th meeting of the committee, who is going to examine the main estimates of the House of Commons and the Parliamentary Protective Service, the administration of the House and the PPS are here today. We begin our study on the operational security of the parliamentary precinct by dealing with the House and the PPS. This part of the meeting will be held in camera. There will be a short period of time to change meetings. For the main estimates, we have with us today the following people.
Charles Robert, Deputy Clerk Administration Michelle Patrice, and Chief Financial Officer Paul St. George. With that, I welcome everyone present. Over to you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, it's my pleasure to be here today on behalf of Speaker Rhoda. I did spoke to Anthony yesterday, and he is doing well. He thanks everyone, of course, for your kind wishes. I know lots of people gave him a call, so he really appreciates that. He remains very involved in the office as he rebuilds his stamina. These are very much his opening remarks that I will deliver today. But I'm going to give you a wink and hope that on Monday he will be in the office and maybe start some work in the House of Commons on Tuesday. So fingers crossed. Les dernières années ont présenté des défis.
The past few years have been challenging in ways we could never have imagined. Nevertheless, the members of Parliament, their staff, and the employees of the House administration have adapted to the current reality. Despite the pandemic, or maybe because of it, the House of Commons has been particularly creative in leveraging technology to support the work of Parliament. Over the past several years, the administration has been investing in technological infrastructure. These investments have enabled parliamentarians and staff to connect securely to the House of Commons network and to one another.
The 2022-2023 fiscal year for the House of Commons and the Parliamentary Protection Services. With me here today, I know they've already been introduced, but quickly, Charles Robert, Clerk of the House of Commons, Michelle Patrice, Deputy Clerk Administration, Paul St. George, Chief Financial Officer. On my left, Superintendent Larry Brookson, Interim Director of the Parliamentary Protective Services, Eric Savard, Chief Financial Officer, and Sonia Vani, Chief of Staff. I'll begin by outlining key elements of the 22-23 main estimates for the House of Commons tabled on March 1st, 2022. The main estimates total $563 million, which represents a net increase of $19.3 million compared to the 2021-2022 main estimates. The 22-23 main estimates were reviewed and approved by the Board of Internal Economy at its meetings on December 16th, 2021. I will present the main estimates for the House of Commons according to 5 major themes corresponding to the handouts that you have received. The financial impact associated with each theme represents the year-over-year changes from the 21-22 main estimates. To start, funding in the amount of $13.8 million for cost of living increases covers requirements for members and House officers' budgets and the House administration, as well as the statutory increases to the members' sessional allowances and additional salary. The annual budget adjustments for members and House officers related to cost of living increases are based on the Consumer Price Index and are essential to the exercise of their parliamentary functions. Turning to major investments, we see a net decrease of $1 million. The sunsetting of the funds included in the 21-22 main estimates to account for one-time costs related to security enhancements for members resulted in a decrease of $4.2 million in the 22-23 main estimates. Another area of focus for major investments that this committee has seen in the past is support for the information technology systems and assets transferred to the House of Commons with the context of the long-term vision and plan. The additional funding provided for the support in the 22-23 main estimates is $2.3 million. Other major investments include support for increased committee activities of $489,000 and committee operations of $322,000. Moving now to the $3.6 million increase for other adjustments for members and House officers. This includes the funding required for the House of Commons contributions to members' pension plans, that is up $3.6 million as determined by the Treasury Board, and an increase of $38,000 for House officers' budgets due to the new party representation in the House following the 2021 general election. Let us now turn to parliamentary diplomacy. The funds earmarked for conferences, associations, and assemblies in the 22-23 main estimates total $768,000. Le budget principal des
The 2022-23 main estimates identified funding for the 47th annual session of the Assemblée parlementaire de la francophonie, scheduled to be held in Quebec in July 2022, but the assembly has been cancelled due to the pandemic. It is anticipated that the sum originally intended for this event will serve to reduce the funding requested in the supplementary estimates. The 65th Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference, which has been postponed by another year from August 2021 to August 2022, remains in these main estimates. Looking ahead to 2023-2024, Canada is set to host the 31st annual session of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Parliamentary Assembly in Vancouver, British Columbia, in July 2023.
Total of $2.2 million for adjustments to the contributions for the House of Commons employee benefit plans. I will now present the 2022-2023 main estimates for the Parliamentary Protective Services. For the 22-23 fiscal year, the service requests a main estimate budget of $100.7 million. This represents an increase of $9.8 million, or 10.9%, over the 21-22 main estimates budget. Before outlining the justification for this increase, it is worth noting the period of financial stability that the service achieved for the past 3 fiscal years, as the budget was maintained at approximately $91 million, with a budgetary variance averaging minus 0.4%. The service's ongoing commitments to financial stewardship is further illustrated by the voluntary budget reduction of 2% applied to the previous main estimates. À l'heure actuelle, le service
Presently, the service is in its 7th year of protecting Canada's Parliament, its parliamentarians, parliamentary employees, and visitors. Even though in the early years the focus was primarily on tactical priorities, the service now operates as a strategic intelligence-led agency, and one that, as it matures, is increasingly focused on the well-being of its employees. Indeed, its 2021-2024 strategic plan outlines 2 organizational priorities that reflect this maturity: providing the parliamentary community with operational excellence and high performance, and ensuring its employees' overall health and wellness. This approach recognizes that both priorities are interdependent. A workplace where all employees experience physical and psychological safety, alongside a sense of belonging, is essential to delivering effectively on the protective mandate.
$0.8 million increase will be used to mature the organization, meet financial obligations, and address the ever-evolving threat environment. These are 2 main categories associated with the request. In the first category are expenses linked to inflationary costs, legislative requirements, and economic increases, which together account for roughly 70% of the ask as follows. Approximately 50% is associated with ongoing economic increases resulting from cost of living adjustments through collective bargaining mandates. An additional 8% provides the service with the necessary capacity to meet legislative requirements in areas such as occupational health and safety, diversity and belonging, and hazard identification and risk assessment. A further 12% is required to cover inflationary increases associated with various goods and services. The remaining 30% of this increase includes 20% to be allocated to threat mitigation and protective mandate initiatives to ensure the service continues to meet its current and future threats effectively. 10% to be invested in resources required to adequately support the service's operational sector. As some of you may recall, 2018 marked an important milestone in the service's history. An initiative was then launched to transition RCMP resources off the Hill. This transition was completed in October of 2020 as RCMP frontline resources were completely demobilized. Today, the Parliamentary Protective Service assumes full responsibility of precinct security. As the service matures, it continues to establish, integrate, and optimize systems to ensure increased operational readiness and effective response. It is making progress on important multi-year projects, such as the implementation of an enterprise resource planning system and a computer automated dispatch system. Having assumed full control of the precinct security with major systems coming online, and with its commitment to people-driven excellence, the Parliamentary Protective Service is better positioned than ever before to deliver on its protective mandate in an ever-evolving threat environment. Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, this concludes the overview of the main estimates for the House of Commons and the Parliamentary Protective Service. We would be pleased to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Was that 8 minutes?
9 minutes 47 secondes, mais
All right.
il n'y a personne
C'était
ici qui
proche.
compte. Donc, merci pour ces commentaires.
9 minutes, 47 seconds. No one's counting here. Thank you for these comments. I'd like to welcome Mr. Brookson, Mr. Savard, and Madame Gagné. We will have only one round of questions, 6 minutes for each party, starting with Mr. Scheer, then Mr. Turnbull, and then Mrs. Gaudreau and Madame Blaney. Mr. Scheer, you have 6 minutes.
I'm surprised that you missed your opportunity to cut off the speaker. That would have been so amazing for an MP to tell the speaker that he ran out of time, but I understand why you didn't. So thanks very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thanks very much for joining us with us today. I just wanted to clarify something you said. I think you said 12% of the increase was related to inflation. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
For PPS. That would have been for the PPS budget.
Okay. Do you have a dollar amount of what that 12% would, how much the inflation that the government is causing is affecting the line item for the Parliamentary Protective Service?
There you go. I'll go to Mr. Savard on that one.
Thank you for your question. The total amount for inflation is about $1.2 million.
1.2 million, okay. All in all, in the last few years, we've seen some pretty big increases to the House of Commons overall spending. The House grew by 10% after the 2015 election, but some years we have 17%, 19%, 2019, 2020, 19.4%, 2020, 2021, 23.6%, and again, another big increase. So what are some of the reasons for these big increases in spending above inflation and above the growth of the House of Commons membership?
I'll go to Mr. St. George.
Thank you for the question. So for the House budget, essentially it's increased by the CPI, and this is a board decision that was made back in 2015. So in terms of dollar amounts, we see this year the inflationary increase is about $13.7 million, which is basically to offset the cost of the CPI rate, the cost of inflation in terms of salaries as well as non-salary items.
One of the challenges that we've had with the pandemic and the restrictions brought in with them is I think we've all experienced, all members have experienced the strain that's been put on House resources, you know, accommodating various committees in a hybrid format, challenges with technology, and with translation especially. And we have been told from over the past few years that when there is something extra, that sometimes committees have to get canceled because they just a complete lack of resources. So now we're being faced with a situation where in the coming weeks, where if the House passes the Liberal motion, we're going to be sitting till midnight regularly from now until the end of the session. What impact do you think that's going to have on committees, the ability for committees to do their work if they've already been strained and now more resources are going to have to be diverted to the late night House sittings?
Well, in fact, Mr. Scheer, if I may. In fact, Mr. Scheer, we do anticipate that there could be an impact. It will really depend on how the House really wants to arrange its business and how often the government uses the option to sit until midnight.
So when the House had midnight sittings last spring, we understand there was about 8 committee meetings per week that were canceled. Is that about what we could expect in the coming? Has the House ramped up in anticipation of this, or is this?
Well, there's the ability to ramp up is in fact going to be determined by the resources that are available to us for by interpretation. And if we also know at the same time that this is a busy period for the Senate, and interpretation has obligations to serve both houses as well as other functions related to government. If there is in fact going to be, and the House has priority over committees. If the House decides to sit on a regular basis to midnight, we are certain that it will have an impact, particularly if the Senate itself at the same time decides to sit.
So there's one parliamentary envelope or pool for interpretation that the Senate and the House both draw from.
That's correct.
The House doesn't have its own.
And not only does it is it the pool basically for Parliament, but it's also for other government services.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just, it is not, the 60 interpreters that we have on call and the others that might be available are not the exclusively used by Parliament.
I see. Where does the House or Parliament fit in the pecking order? Like
Near the
who
top.
Gets the first? Okay, we're the top. Okay, just want to make sure of that. Okay, so and sorry to loop back to the increase. Can you just repeat what the overall increase? It's just 3.5% this year. Is the only increase this year over last year?
The increase itself is actually broken up into different components. So one is related to the CPI, and that's what we award to the members' office, the members' budgets, as well as what we saw was increases was related to one-time events. So in terms of security, in terms of initiatives, stuff like that, that essentially add up to about $5 million this year. Those are one-time in nature. Some of them particularly related to COVID-19.
So what's the total percentage increase year over year if you add in everything, the CPI inflation, the
3.5% would be this year over last year.
Total increase. Okay. On the Parliamentary Protective Service side, I was speaker just on the tail end, just as the entity was being constructed and all that. Overall, any feedback as to whether or not that has achieved the goal of streamlining, of finding efficiencies, of eliminating duplications, especially as it relates to costs? Are we have we seen increases, decreases, about the same level of spending? Where would you rate the impact that the new service has had on the cost of providing security on the Hill?
I'll ask Mr. Brookson to answer, or does Eric? Okay, sorry, Mr. Eric.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Chair. It's a bit of a complicated question in the sense that when we were initially created, we had the RCMP element protecting the grounds of the precinct, and therefore, through the transition, we managed to gain some savings from removing the RCMP and replacing them with our own personnel, and those savings have been basically, reinvested within the service to grow the support functions and the administration. Overall, the cost of security hasn't that much increased for the last couple of years. This year is the first in 3 years that we've asked for a substantial increase of about 10%. So as well as the nature of the work gets more complicated, and that I would have to pass the ball back to Mr. Brookson as to the nature of the security services that we offer and the threat level that exists. I believe that some of the objectives initially when PPS was created have been achieved. But the threat environment has evolved, and that's what we need to my understanding, keep up with.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just so we all know, because I'm a little bit inconsistent from our traditional meetings where everything goes through the speaker, I want to say thank you to Mr. Scheer for the tone and temperament of that exchange for the benefit of interpreters. So as long as we're not speaking over each other, we're good with that, and as long as we are professional and honorable like members are always, we will continue at this pace, and I'm passing it over for 6 minutes to Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and let me just first say thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Sorry I couldn't join you in person, but just wanted to thank you for the tireless work you put in every day to make our House of Commons function. I have two lines of questioning, and then I hope to share my time with my colleague, Ms. Romanato. So one, I want to start with the PPS folks, the Parliamentary Protective Service folks. I'm wondering, just given what we've seen during the occupation of downtown Ottawa, which I won't recount at length, but certainly when you talk about an evolving threat environment, I really see that this incident was something that tested all of us and the Parliamentary Protective Service, and certainly brought up many, concerns for the health and safety of members of Parliament and staff on the Hill. So, given that, will this change the budgeting considerations for in the future for PPS, and what security measures are now necessary on the Hill that weren't before? And perhaps I direct that to Larry Brookson, but happy if anybody else wants to answer.
Madam Chair, thank you. I want to be sensitive to speaking in the open as far as what security measures that we currently have in place. And it's also important to note as context of submission of these mains was pre-occupation period. So I know it's not answering your question, Mr. Turnbull, but I'm more than open once we get into closed camera to talk more specifically about ongoing threats and the service's ability to continue to be where it needs to be to protect parliamentarians, their staffers, and members of the public that are on the precinct.
So, Mr. Brookson, if I could just follow up, Madam Chair, just quickly with a question through you to Mr. Brookson based on that. So the estimates that we see in front of us, I'm looking at it on my screen, do not include added budget for potentially the evolving threat environment that may be represented by that incident of the occupation of downtown Ottawa. Would that be correct?
Correct, Mr. Turnbull.
And so would you anticipate through you, Madam Chair, an increase to the overall PPS budget for the future in order to be fully equipped in order to deal with those types of evolving threats, as we say?
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Mr. Brookson. Okay, I'm going to move to the House of Commons admin folks that are there, and thank you again all for being there. I want to talk about the hybrid setting. So certainly, we've operated for 2 years in a hybrid setting. I think this is becoming more popular, although, I think we've all experienced the advantages with this added capability. And yet there's also been challenges, right? I mean, so we've experienced the benefits, but there's also been challenges. I and my staff team, for example, just recently had planned a big event on the Hill for stakeholders, members of Parliament, and senators, and have really struggled to get the resources to have a sub-caucus meeting that is hybrid and has translation services. So what I'm concerned about, this is very frustrating for members of Parliament. I certainly have heard it from some of my colleagues, and I wonder just how this is being addressed in the current budget. Will there be more resources and a solution for increased capacity to have more hybrid sittings, especially for sub-caucuses and special events that members of Parliament are organizing?
I think the answer to your question depends really on the availability of interpretation services. To date, that has really limited our capacity to provide support. I think the conversation really has to take place with Public Works and to see what can be done to build the pool of interpreters and what qualifications they need to have or to secure in order to actually be effective in providing support for services on the Hill and elsewhere within government.
Can I just ask, is there a budget implication to that? So it sounds like there's a capacity issue there in terms of drawing from the same pool and needing more trained people perhaps, but is there a budget implication for the resources that are needed in order to accommodate all the meetings on a Hill? Has that assessment been done of how much more of a budget we need?
I don't think we can really answer that question quite definitively at this point. We don't really know what demand growth there will be. We are limited now because of the interpretation services capacity, Once that adjusts and once the members decide that they want to expand the range of meetings that they want to hold that need to be supported by the administration, we will make an assessment of the impact that that will have on our resources and respond accordingly.
Yeah, and let me just say that I really appreciate the work that our translation interpretive services are doing every day to support us. I know they're working hard, so this is not an issue with the current interpreters. They're fantastic people behind the scenes that work tirelessly every day to support us. So thank you to them. Just think we need more of wonderful people like you. So thank you, Mr. Robert. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Romanato. Hopefully I have a little time left. Sorry.
So thank you very much. I know I don't have very much time. I just have one question. We mentioned people-driven. One area that I've noticed over the last couple of years is since we've moved from Center Block to West Block, there is, and this may sound like a bizarre question, but there is no canopy or overhang over the entrance doors that we go through when we're coming across Wellington, so we go up to West Block. And I've actually witnessed a piece of ice snow chunk almost hit the Parliamentary Protective Service member, let alone members of Parliament or staff who are walking in. And is there a plan in the mains to address that? Because I am quite concerned. They have no protection from the elements or from falling snow or from falling ice from the roof of West Block. Thank you.
I think Mr. Patrice would take that.
Yes, thank you for that information, first of all. And we're going to have discussion with Public Works. It's Public Works who basically owns the building and do des améliorations of that nature. There's been discussion about actually with a kind of a cover in terms of the entrance of the West Block. As you can see often, the maintenance in terms of the building and so on are done regularly, and also snow removal by Public Works contractors. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Madame Gaudreau, 6 minutes pour vous.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So from the beginning, I'd like to thank my colleagues because you have already answered some of my questions, and I'll continue in the same vein. Not only am I delighted to have this meeting, it's the first time for me to be able to imagine what the Quebecois and Canadians might want to tell you. So I'd like to thank you, to congratulate you for your excellent work. And also there's a specific message to the interpreters. I think that we have experienced this, and as a part to 2019, I did not expect I'd be faced with the technological problems, and to see how interpreters were such a precious resource. Sometimes we're a little annoying with our French language, but it's our work, and we're very proud to have the services. So I have a question. People have heard me speak of occupational health and safety, especially as concerns interpreters. Yes, there's an increase in the budget for the tools. We have received some tools recently. So considering that we will know more at the end of this session how we're going to be working maybe with a hybrid element or with technological tools, have you also foreseen in the budget or provide something to make sure that everyone has the proper equipment, that the interpreters be well treated in order to avoid problems? There have been health issues there. Is there a prevention perspective for these dear interpreters? Yes, we've already put in place measures to ensure the safety of the interpreters, especially for their health. And we always improve the equipment. We're constantly improving the equipment because, as you know, there were complaints concerning the technology, the quality of sound, and it's a concern for us. I know that the technological and digital services people have taken measures in order to ensure that the equipment used by the interpreters is the best possible. Well, I'd like to really congratulate those 16. I know that there are 4 new ones who have arrived, so I hope you will not have any concerns in terms of the availability. So In the detail of expenses for the Parliamentary Protective Service, we talk about acquisition of material and equipment, but even 2 years, there's been an important increase. So could we explain that? Is it the fleet that has to be modernized? Mr. Savard? Thank you for the question, Madame Gaudreau. Yes, the vehicle fleet is one of the items for which there's an increase. There's also some protective equipment that we're using. There were investments made to equip our people with the tools that they need in order to do their work. So that combined with some rental improvements in our workspaces has given rise to these recent increases. And given that I still have some time, I would like to have your opinion on the perspective in the assessment we're going to be making over the next few weeks on security on the Hill and the parliamentary precinct. So there will be probably changes in terms of security. How do you envision this? We will have the opportunity to discuss with you in terms of advice, but I think at the public level it would be important to tell our people how concerned we are and how you are preparing for it.
The investments that we've made or that we've asked for in the mains, again, we're pre-occupation. So if for the question on being what are we going to be putting in place moving forward for the immediate, those are discussions that still need to take place as to what levels of investment that we're going to need to put into the service to put that, particularly when we're talking about what the precinct is going to look like moving forward. Puis je m'excuse que je n'ai pas capable de...
And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to answer in French. Well, I'm telling you that you have an excellent grasp of French. Well, I'm missing a certain level of confidence, maybe. Well, it's the same thing for me in English. I'm working at it. And as long as we can understand each other clearly, everything's good. In terms of the electronic aspects, we saw that there was an important change there. And what's also happening in the center block, can we have anticipate a significant increase in the budget related to new technologies or in future needs for equipment, or what's the situation in that regard? Thank you for your question. Yes, in terms of technological investment, in terms of the replacement cycle and also as concerns new technologies, the necessary funds are provided in the budget to ensure that the deputies, their staff and the administration have the resources and the equipment necessary for them to carry out their work. Well, thank you very much. That's all from my questions. Thank you very much. Madam Blaney, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank all our witnesses for being here today. I know that the last several months have been incredibly taxing on everyone, and I just want to recognize all the hard work that you provided to us during that time. The first question I want to ask is around committees. We know that this is an ongoing challenge for sure. I know it's not easy for me to tell some of my members that we're going to have to cancel their committee to accommodate another. So I'm just wondering if we could get a little clarity about where the gap is. Is it in technology? Is it in technology and interpretation, or is it simply in the role of the interpreters that serve us?
Well, there are always going to be capacity limits depending on how far you stretch it. But in the current environment in which we are working, it is largely the factor of interpretation and its ability to serve, given the limited number of qualified interpreters who can perform the job.
Okay. And I guess I know that the interpreters have had a very hard time the last few years. We know that injuries have increased dramatically. Having people not have proper technology has been a challenge, trying to get the best technology. So I guess my next question is just around, is there a need for better investment in tools, and I am not the expert, of course, that will support our interpreters so that we have less injuries. And the other part of the question is part of our challenge based around the fact that we do have interpreters that are having to take time off because of their injuries.
The nature of virtuality and so on, in terms of the technology, we are making the necessary investment, and not only that, we're continuing to pursue in terms of improvement on the technological aspect. You're right, that mode of work for interpreters is challenging both for them in terms of their health and physically. So that's why they cannot do the same length of time as if it was a physical meeting. So we're continuing to obviously leveraging our capacity, our knowledge, and also expert in the industry to continue to try to improve the working environment for interpreters.
Okay, and the last part is around injury. Are we losing so many interpreters to injury that it is making it harder for us to have as many committees as we may want?
For that question, I would unfortunately kind of direct you to the Interpretation Bureau, which is a public works, but obviously we looked at the numbers and we look at each incident to make sure that from the House perspective, we're doing our best to reduce that amount of injuries.
There's also the reality of the pandemic and the fact that interpreters too are liable to catching the virus. And that too has an impact on their ability to serve us.
Okay, thank you. Well, I cannot say enough good things about the interpreters. They are always very, very generous with me, so I just want to acknowledge their incredible work and their patience through this very hard time. I guess I want to come over to the PPS, some questions about the PPS. I guess the Deputy Speaker spoke very well in his presentation to us, and thank you for being here to represent Anthony. But one of the things that I'm not clear and just need a little bit more clarification in is what is the role between the PPS and the RCMP? Has that completely been done, and who is fully responsible for the protective services on the parliamentary settings? I'm just trying to understand that better.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your question. So I remain the last RCMP officer on the Hill, so it's been completely decoupled from the service. The two speakers run the direction of the service, and that's where I take my marching orders from.
Okay, so who does the PPS directly report to? Is that the speaker?
Both speakers, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So much for that. Well, we know that during the occupation, there was a tremendous amount of work for them. And, you know, by and large, they did an incredible job with very trying circumstances. I guess one of the questions that I have relating to this budget, and you've referenced this several times, that was not accounted for when these estimates were sent in, is we know that in terms of staffing, there was a lot of overtime. There was a lot of people that were supposed to be on vacation that, of course, were asked to not go on vacation to accommodate the situation. I'm just wondering about those impacts and how are the PPS doing in terms of being able to fulfill the work that they need to do now after going through such a hard time?
Thank you. Our main focus is into our frontline, our employees that work for the service, and it was we did spend quite a bit of time in reaching out and providing the necessary assistance, particularly to our employees that were most impacted by the occupation. And I'm going to tell you, it was broad. Like it wasn't just the impact on our employees; it was the impact on their respective families, because we had a lot of our employees who were not able to be with their families because we had them working almost nonstop. We took the time as a service family to reach out to our employees, whether it was through assistance for psychologists or whatever, and keep reminding our employees that their mental wellness is an absolute priority for the service, and that's not going to change for us.
And sorry, I just have a few more seconds. I just want to check with the economic part of that, of having to pay that kind of overtime, having to make people not take their vacation, obviously postponing that for a period. What are the impacts for us in a budgetary way?
Eric?
Thank you for your question, Lainey. In total, the cost of the convoy for PPS was about $6.3 million. And in overtime accrued expenditures, I should say, and not all taken. A lot of it has been taken on, will be taken on leave eventually, total about $4.5 million. And so the employees have had a choice basically to take either a pay of the overtime or just take it as compensatory leave, which in further in the future months they'll be able to take the time off and enjoy the time with their families.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to say on this National Day of Mourning, I think it's quite fitting that we've been talking about our workers, those who have died, those who have suffered illness or injury. I think it's been a really good exchange. So we also think about all those, to the last comments, who surround them, who have been impacted. So I think it's been a nice exchange. So I want to thank all members and our witnesses for being with us today. Now we will just switch over to an in-camera session to continue our meeting. So we suspend for a couple minutes. Thank you.